I'm going to double click on this. I was actually in rehab for alcohol addiction. And I literally wrote the business plan for my company while I was in rehab. And within a year and a half, I was making like $20,000 a month.
Welcome to the 9 to 5 Quitters Club, the podcast uncovering the creator entrepreneurs at the forefront of a work revolution. Today, we're speaking with Terry Rice, a business coach, keynote speaker, and content creator who has redefined what it means to build a personal brand by embracing vulnerability and authenticity. From corporate layoffs to building a thriving career as a savage storyteller, Terry's journey is one of resilience, invention, and bold self-expression. In this episode, we explore how Terry leveraged his personal struggles to create a powerful anti-hero persona that resonates deeply with his audience.
I joined the Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce and I DM'd like every member saying, hey, by the way, I'm a digital marketing expert. I would love to help you grow your business. Here's how. And the results were depressingly nothing.
We'll also dive into his unique approach to storytelling and how he uses it to build trust and connection with his audience.
The most unique thing about me is the adversity that I've gone through and how I'm still here. And that adversity plus the audacity to tell your story is how you become more authentic to your audience.
And make sure to stick around till the end for actionable advice on how you can craft your own anti-hero narrative that stands out in today's crowded creator economy.
What are their pains? Cool, tap into that shit. What are their gains? Cool, talk about that shit. And then tell your story in a way that it wraps all that into a narrative.
This episode is packed with insights on building a personal brand that's not just authentic, but unapologetically bold. Let's dive in, and we hope you enjoyed this conversation with Terry Rice.
So I spent my first 10 years in corporate working at companies like Facebook and Adobe, and I got fired. So that's how I left my 9 to 5. So the reason why I love telling this part of the story is because so many people listening have also been fired. And if I tell the story, I decided I want something more out of life. Bro, you don't get me. Like, I get you. If you've been fired, I know it sucks. I've been there before. I actually got laid off when my wife was pregnant with our first kid. So I was really going through it at the time. Oof. So yeah, that's step one. Leave corporate one way or another. And on my end, I suffered what I would consider identity foreclosure, where I thought all I could do as an entrepreneur, it would be similar to what I did in corporate. So for the first 4 or 5 years, I was a digital marketing consultant. And I enjoyed that to an extent, but after a while, it just felt boring. And no, I'm not dissing any digital marketing people out there, but I couldn't find a way to express myself as much as I wanted to. And at times I felt like a walking user manual that was like slightly sarcastic and interesting, but I couldn't really put my full personality into it. After that, I pivoted towards helping other entrepreneurs grow their business, which was fun for me because the way that I've been able to build my business is through speaking and my content, so I can help other people do the same thing. A few years ago, like that still didn't seem like enough. I wanted to help the same audience to an extent, but find a different way to do it. And this is actually a good transition to the whole anti-hero story, which I know we'll get into, where I just wanted to be more real about who I am as a person and my background and what led me to where I am. And we'll get more into that later. But that's really a transition, just getting to know myself more and not feeling like I have to follow a path that someone else already set for me. And just enjoying the freedom that I have now.
Real quick on that timeline, then.
Sorry, hold on. I just realized I never actually said what the hell I do. Hold on.
What is it you do? And also, I'm going to tack on to that. Yeah, you get fired. What was that next 6 months or year like? Did you pick up other jobs? How'd you get to where you are?
Yeah, so what do I do? Well, I'm a storyteller, as you can tell. Keynote speaker, author, what else? Course creator, brand partner for several companies. I guess that's it. I coach my daughter's flag football team. That's a lot of fun. But overall, my goal is to help people live and tell better stories. So that's why I love helping people get clear on their identity, who they are, their vision, what they want to do, and then the routines needed to have that lifestyle that leads to that vision they're talking about. So that's me in a nutshell. And to answer your question, what were the first few months after getting fired? I'm going to double click on this. I was actually in rehab for alcohol addiction. And I literally wrote the business plan for my company while I was in rehab. And within a year and a half, I was making like $20,000 a month. So, hey, the plan worked, but it sucked. You know what I mean? It sucked when your identity goes from this guy who works at all these cool ass companies to all of a sudden you're like not doing that and you're, getting your life right. But that was 10 years ago. And luckily I never relapsed, never drank again, never even wanted to. But it was really tough. I remember I joined the Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce because I wanted some kind of identity, like some kind of plaque on the wall, something to say about myself, because again, when you leave corporate, you lose part of your identity sometimes. So that's what I did. And to grow my business, here's what I did for everyone who wants to learn that. I joined the Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce, and I DM'd like every member saying, hey, by the way, I'm a digital marketing expert. I would love to help you grow your business. Here's how. And the results were depressingly nothing, right? I got nothing out of that whatsoever. But then I was like, all right, I got an idea. I have an idea. What if I approach the Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce and say, hey, I'd love to do a free talk for your members, like digital marketing for founders. What do you say? They said yes to that, and then invited their members to my event. They gave me like this conference room in downtown Brooklyn. It was amazing. I walk in, there's like 60 people waiting to hear me speak. I was like, holy cow, this is way easier than just DMing people, hoping they give me the time of day. That said, I know some of the people in attendance were people that I reached out to because they had very unique names. I'm like, oh, now you're here. Now you're here because someone else invited you. But moral of the story is I got 2 clients from that. And that's the process I've used quite a bit since then, which is speaking to grow my business, getting paid to speak, but also getting paid through speaking.
That's super cool because that's like, I don't think people talk about that as a strategy much, like a word of mouth or just in public version of the one-to-many. Mm-hmm. Were you just dead set right away on not going back to corporate? That's what I'm curious about. Were you cruising job boards, or it was just like, hell with that, we're on to a different path?
This is like embarrassing, but I'll tell you a story, right? So when I was trying to get back into corporate, I think that was before I like quit drinking. So like my resume, like there's freaking typos on top of typos. Like no one was going to reply to me because of that. And I was like, all right, bro, you're a mess. And luckily my wife got me to clean my life up. But then even when I was like clean, I was like, I don't even want to explain why I left all these amazing jobs. I don't want to lie. I just don't. I'd rather just make my own way and see what happens. I want to bet on myself instead of having my sense of self-worth associated with like a logo on my resume or something like that.
What is an anti-hero? We'll follow up, but give us just like an introduction to the idea if people don't know.
Yeah, I'll tell a story. I'll give you a short version of the introduction, and then I'll tell you a story that helps me, that'll arrive at it. But everyone on social media, there's so many people trying to be experts. I am so smart. I am so perfect. Look at me, so on and so forth. Okay, bro, we get it. But the problem with that is they're not relatable, right? Because all they do is win-win no matter what. So I feel like people are just like sick of the crap. And I know that because I've done research on my own audience, which I can share later if you want. But with so many people now creating like AI generated content, that's what it sounds like too. Like, how do you sound smart on social media, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So I was like, why would I compete with these people? That's not the most unique thing about me. The most unique thing about me is the adversity that I've gone through and how I'm still here. And that adversity plus the audacity to tell your story is how you become more authentic to your audience. And if you think about superheroes, there's Superman, great guy, blah, blah, but freaking boring. All he does is win. I loved Batman because he was a human. Yeah. He was a regular human. He had no superpowers whatsoever. He just figured stuff out, right? So he's very much an anti-hero, didn't like a lot of people, blah, blah. But I'll tell you how I arrived at this moment of clarity. I was talking to my book mentor, Bruce Feiler, and I'm at his home in Brooklyn. And he's, okay, just give me your life story, right? Just tell me everything from beginning to end. And I shared much of what I shared with you just now. And he's, I'm curious, and I think other people are curious too. After all the challenges that you've been through, and it's not even the half of it that I told you so far, getting fired, battling alcoholism, but at the same time, over the last 10 years, I've also lost my brother, my father, my son, and my grandfather, and I'm still here. He's like, hearing all this, like, how are you just engaged in these arenas and fighting battles that some people never get a chance in, and you still win, you still thrive, you still survive? How? And I was like, I don't know, man. It's like when I'm at the gym. I'm just a fucking savage. And he's, that's it. That's it. That's what your book should be called, and teach other people how they can become a savage as well. So like I've seen the light bulb go off with you too. It's like, yeah. So yeah, that was an epiphany moment for me. I'm like, wait, so I don't have to pretend to be perfect. I can actually use the story of battling alcoholism, of getting fired, of all this loss as part of my brand to actually help inspire people to say, this guy could do it. Maybe I can too. So there was this freedom that came with that. And I was like, yo, this is dope. So I started posting more just like edgy content on social media about who I am and my experiences and my personality. And people were just loving it. I was like, all right, cool. Let me just turn it up a notch. And what I realized is people wanted an identity to really grasp onto. And that's when I came up with the anti-hero persona. And to develop your persona, really, you have to, first of all, get clear on who you are. How do you serve your audience? How do you show up in the world? Whatever it is. Great. You have to have the expertise. Cool. We have that. The other thing you want to think about is this. what unique stories can I tell that make me stand out from the crowd, right? So for me, it's like getting fired, it's all this random stuff, so on and so forth. But then the third thing you have to figure out is, all right, there's two enemies that I have to fight for my audience as an anti-hero. The first is their confusion, their lack of progress, whatever it is that they need help with, I need to fight that enemy for them, right? But there's another enemy that people actually neglect. So when I'm fighting that enemy, I'm saying, hey, here's information on how to build your business. Here's information on how to learn how to knit, so on and so forth, right? So you have to do that. But at the same time, you want to combine your edge, your experiences with that give you the authority to talk about this stuff, right? So we have the authority, we have this information, but there's another enemy you can fight for your audience. So you're not just fighting one enemy, you're fighting two. The other one is the bullshit out there. It's the false idols, the myths that you have to debunk, like all this bad information. It might also be your audience's own mindset that you're fighting for them. So that anti-hero is going to say, hey, look, I know this shit's tough. It was tough for me too, but I know this is the path. All these other guys, they're saying shit just to get you to buy stuff, right? They've been successful for 20 years. They don't know what it's like to grind like I am because I've been doing this stuff recently. So anyways, like when you do that, you get to just tap into this anger that they have, right? And not in a tactful way, but it's like, everyone's been ripped off by some course they bought, not on Teachable, of course, or some like coach, or just taking bad information, so on and so forth. So I'm like, yeah, bro, I hear you. That shit sucks too. I hear you, and I want to help you. So that's the benefit. I mean, you just like, you elicit this emotional reaction from people where they're like, wow, this guy really gets me. He's not just saying like, here's how you build your email list or whatever. He's, hey, I know what it's like when you drop $400 on all this crap and nothing still happens. You feel like you don't know what the hell you're talking about. Really, it's just like there's a few tweaks you have to make. Let me give you the real, here's what worked for me.
You literally took so much of this like creator advice and just made it savage. I love picturing yourself as the person going and fighting for your audience. Yeah. That's such an immediately different mindset. That's so savage. That is awesome. Yeah. I want to dig into just like how you get comfortable with this a bit, because I've also been hearing more and more in this space, like the death of authenticity as something. People are just sick of the advice. And even within that, you go watch the big creators in their authentic, in their Ferraris, in their stuff. It's not relatable. You talk about a persona, but how do you make that persona that's true to yourself without fabricating something that isn't real?
Yeah, I'm going to tap into a few things here. The first is you have to have conversations with yourself. And people don't want to do that often, right? There's this exercise that I have that I provide to my clients where you get clear on your identity, who you are, like the real you, your morals, your values, your ethics, your skills, so on and so forth. And from there, you're able to strip down some of the layers that people put on you without your permission, just defining who you are. You might have heard of the exercise like Ikigai. It's like this Japanese. Yeah. So it's like you can do something like that, right? Don't take a personality test because that shit is like whatever, bro. I just think like you need to answer your own freaking questions. Don't let some machine say, you scored a 5 on this and a 3 on that. That means you are blah, blah, blah. Bro, just write your own shit. You know what I mean? So that's what I would recommend is getting very clear on who you are, but then just having the boldness to share it. That's the tough part. Like every time I post about battling alcoholism, being overweight, I'm not like happy about it, but I know that's what really I need to do to stand out in an authentic way. And I think if people just realize that other people give you opportunities because they feel connected to you. And one way to form a connection is by sharing this deep, vulnerable content, but it can't be bullshit. You know what I mean? Like it has to be real stuff. And I can give you some examples of that, but I do want to zoom out and give you one thing that I think most creators are missing when they're creating their content. And it's empathy. And you're like, oh, dude, like the buzzword. I know, I get it. But have you ever created an empathy map? If you don't know what that is, you should probably write that down right now. UX designers know exactly what the hell I'm talking about, but an empathy map will show you what's going on inside the head of your audience. What are they thinking, saying, feeling, and doing? But another really important part is, what are their pains? What really keeps them up at night? Another part is, what are their gains? What would help them find success? So then when you're crafting your anti-hero persona, you're like, okay, what are their pains? Cool, tap into that shit. What are their gains? Cool, talk about that shit. And then tell your story in a way that it wraps all that into a narrative. And if you're like, Terry, how do I create an empathy map? Go to ChatGPT, enter information about your audience, and say, please create an empathy map. So I think that part's really important. And then your question about authenticity, I was speaking at some event. It was like down in Atlanta, right? And you know what people do when they speak at events anywhere? They're like, I was honored and humbled to speak at this event. I'm like, do you know what humbled means? It means you got your ass handed to you. It's not humbled, bro. Honored, sure. Yeah. Humbled, no. Second of all, nobody cares except for you and your friends and your relatives. I was speaking at this event, and I could have been like, hey, look at me on the stage, blah, blah. But here's how you make that more authentic, yet still get credit for being a speaker. It's a true story. I'm down in Atlanta. I'm about to get dressed to go on stage. I realized I don't have a belt. And I'm like, this is not the time for this stuff, or I don't have a belt. So what I did is I tied 2 lanyards together, and that's how I made my belt before I went on stage. That's the story that I told on social media about how I forgot my belt and looked silly and had to like blah, 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 right? That's more authentic, but I still get credit for being a public speaker. Another time, I was speaking at this event in Boston. I'm about to speak in front of 8,000 people. So I'm like, oh, I got to make sure I'm hydrated. I get stuck in Boston traffic on the way to the event. I got to go to the bathroom. So I had the Uber driver pulled over on the highway so I could go. And then I'm on my merry way. I'm almost there. I'm like, I have to go again. And he's, you should probably just get out. So anyways, en route to speak in front of 8,000 people, I had to stop to pee twice. That's the story I told. But everyone else would be humbled and honored to speak in front of 8,000 people. For me, I'm like, bro, I had to pee. It's that permission to just be yourself and stop worrying about proving, protecting, and pleasing other people. That's what makes you savage, and that's how you pull out that anti-hero persona as well.
We'll be right back after this brief message. This podcast is brought to you by Teachable and therefore has no sponsors. So we just wanted to take a moment to encourage you to go check out Terry's website at thesavagelife.co, where you can download his free guide on building a bold personal brand that leads with integrity while inspiring others. Creators like Terry are the reason this podcast exists, so supporting them helps us continue bringing you more of their stories and lessons. Okay, now back to the episode. What are the 5 steps to at least having the anti-hero you can now explore and will develop over time?
Yeah, I think the first few are basic. It's like, how do you form your personal brand? What do you do? What do you care about, right? Who's your target audience? So on and so forth. So we have that as well. The third step that people miss is creating an empathy map. They're just shooting from the hip, assuming they know what people want, assuming what they're going through, so on and so forth. And that's why they're not making the impact, because they have no empathy. You can't persuade someone if you're not charismatic, and you can't be charismatic if you have no empathy for them. You know what I mean? It ain't gonna work, right? So I'm surprised that people don't come to that conclusion sooner, but it is what it is. So the fourth step, again, is creating content that is going to just really create a pattern interrupting thought. Like, wow, this person is really speaking to me. Holy cow, they're saying they're saying the quiet part out loud. They're talking about their recent failures, not like 20 years ago I struggled, now I'm doing great. Like they're saying, no, this dumbass forgot his belt. So it's like, I'm telling these stories that are so intricate and so granular, and just like, you feel like you know me. And my goal is for you to root for me, even though I'm fighting these battles for you, right? So the anti-hero still has fans. And I think that's what you have to calibrate your brand around. And the fifth step is just like the audacity to hit post. Because what really pains me is there are people out there listening right now who have these freaking amazing stories inside of them, but they don't want to tell it because they're afraid of how they'll look, right? Again, we go back to the proving, protecting, and pleasing, right? But on my end, when I finally started telling the real story about myself and my background, what was going on behind the scenes, that's when my brand really took off. And one thing I did recently is, and I recommend everyone do this, right? I just started DMing people that engage with my content. And I just said, hey, why do you like my content? What is it about my content that you enjoy? And things that came up were storytelling, real advice I could actually take action on, authenticity, even though we hate that word, and you just seem like a real person. So then I took all that information and I put that into ChatGPT, and I was like, hey, can you summarize this and give me advice on how to create content going forward that'll be a good fit for my audience while still staying true to my voice? And it gave me this amazing output, right? So these are like the little things that anyone can do with a little bit of extra effort. And as a result of that, like the outcomes are exponential. They're not linear.
What was that practice like early on? Because I think I first met you like 3 or 4 years ago, and you have gotten way better at this. So what's your personal practice to not be safe and not to fall back into that, oh, I should just say what people expect?
Yeah. Do you know who Mark Curry is? Have you heard of Mark Curry?
Yeah.
So Mark Curry was on the show Hanging with Mr. Cooper. This is like back in the 90s. Affable comedian, enough liked, but not necessarily a superstar these days, right? Heard of Dave Chappelle before?
Yes.
Huge mega superstar. offends a lot of people, though. He says what's on his mind. And what I said to myself was like, end of the day, I'd rather be Dave Chappelle than Mark Curry. And it is soul-sucking to hold back this part of my personality that is so true and is so ingrained in me and has made me the person that I am. Like, a lot of people died for me to become the person I am. Legit. My son, my brother, my father, my grandfather, all those people died for me to become the person I am and shape who I am. Why would I do them this service of holding that back and just acting like cheery and affable all the time on social media? And when I really went in was actually my brother passed away in November of 2023. I was going through a time, right? And I was writing about it, but I was like, honestly, like, I don't feel like coming out of this zone. I think this is here to stay. And that's when like my content really took a big shift and people were just really grasping onto it and appreciating the realness. So it came from a moment of pain, but it's like a really good way to honor my brother and everyone else who came before me. And I'm asking everyone listening to do the same thing because you have so many fucking stories that are amazing. You yourself sometimes, it's like amazing that you're even here, breathing, walking, talking. You should get credit for that by telling these stories, and that's how you get rewarded and recognized for who you are instead of just what you do.
It's like heavy, man, but it's not, though, because it brings your life closer to your work, which is also part of what you wanted to do doing this, right? Not being told what to do, not being represented by a logo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me double click because it's not my life is not shitty. You know what I mean? I have 4 young children at home.
No, I didn't hear that either.
No, but I want to even share that in the content. Even my content. Levity. I'll try to make this one brief because I know I'm like blabbing a lot. But I was at an event for my daughter at her school, and my son Tyson wanted me to pick him up, and I'm like, "Nah, dude, hold your own." And he tried climbing me instead, and accidentally pulled my pants down in a crowded theater. I was a little perturbed, but I didn't get pissed because I'd been meditating so much in the months before. So I shared that story on social media. Hey, my son pulled my pants down. I didn't get angry. Here's some tips you can take to regulate your emotions. And that got picked up by Fatherly. So an editor from Fatherly reached out to me saying, hey, can we please interview you about your pants getting pulled down? And I was like, that authenticity shit, I guess it works. You know what I mean? So like, there are so many times I've gotten media mentions and press because and speaking gigs because I talk about all aspects. I talk about my fitness journey, right? I talk about being a parent. I talk about being resilient. I talk about being a business owner. I talk about just like shit I think is interesting. So people see like all these entry points to get involved with me, to learn more about me, and fortunately root for me. And I do appreciate that, but you have to unleash this stuff. I think one thing you should be aware of is not everyone's going to like the content you're putting out. You asked me if I ever give pause. There was one post I put out that basically said, hey, you should exercise. And someone like replied to me like, hey, I'm actually disabled and I would love to do all these things, but I can't. When I see content like this from you, it makes me feel bad. And I was like, honestly, I'm not trying to make anybody feel bad, but I also can't shrink to fit this mold that has held me back and made me feel like I'm just not giving my all to my audience either. And I also said, look, I'm not like trying to compare things, but my brother spent the last 10 years of his life in a wheelchair. And he was still trying to work out and encouraging me. And he told me like, hey, my problems are not your problems. You still got to be the best version of yourself and get loud about it. So for me, like it's like a no malice thing whatsoever. There's also no mercy. Like I got to speak my own mind. And from there, a lot of people like it. Some people don't, but it's better than being Mark Curry, who's hopefully not listening to this podcast.
I just love this mindset of even just what you said earlier, like you're fighting for your audience, not just like helping them. If someone's trying to get to the point where they're doing this full time, but they still have their day job, I feel like that element of being so public with yourself can be scarier or weirder, like your coworkers might see it. Yeah. How do you balance that in people where you can still show up authentically as the anti-hero, but you're not maybe risking losing your job by saying everything that's on your mind?
Yeah. The way I see it is you can say whatever you want on social media, whatever you want, so long as you can deal with the consequences. So with that, what I would say is be aware of the consequences. You know what I mean? Pretend you want to be a level 10 and how savage you are, so on and so forth. The most you can go at your job is 4. You better stay at a 4. And don't say, the guy from that podcast said I can do what I want. Nah, dude, that's your life. You got to take care of your own stuff. Don't take my advice and go like full savage if you know that you work at a company that doesn't appreciate that. So that is what it is. And again, like whatever level you can go to, if it's a 4 out of 10, be a solid 4 and keep on showing up. But also realize you're building a brand that's going to reward you for years. So once you leave that company, you'll have this following. You can express yourself more clearly should you choose to. But yeah, you got to watch out, man. Don't just take advice, again, from the random guy on a podcast and get fired. Like, that's not a good look. I know. I've been fired enough times to know it ain't pleasant.
As you leaned into this, have you found yourself becoming more of this person? Like, how much does this character exist outside of you, and how is that affecting who you are?
No, it's always been in me. And that's the funny thing. My video editor, like when he started hearing some of my new content, he's like, yo, this is you. This is the real you. Like, I dig this. And I'm trying to tell the story in a way that doesn't make it sound like it's something it's not. But I was a bouncer for 8 years when I was in college, like before and after, and even like during, actually not 8 years, 6 years. Sorry. I didn't take that long to graduate. But I've done some stuff. I was never like overly aggressive, but I made sure I made it home safely and tried not to harm anyone excessively in the process. So this isn't something I'm like new to. I'm not a bouncer anymore, so I'm not like wrestling people in the street anymore. But it's not like foreign for me whatsoever to be more, I'd say, aggressive in the way I communicate and act. And again, I'm raising small children, right? I got a 3-year-old daughter, so I'm not just like this monster or whatever. But it's not. I'm not like one of those keyboard warriors. Maybe that's what I'm trying to say. What you're seeing is real, and you'll see it when you see me in person. Like when you see me on stage, like I'm the same person. That's what I love hearing from people. Like you're the same person online that you are when I see you in person.
How has this trickled down through everything you do, through your speaking, through your courses? Is this a thread you pull through the whole thing?
It is, and I'll tell you, like, there's a easy answer for me to give you. I want to give a more useful one, though. So easy answer is yes. I do include that in my content. Like, even I was in Palm Springs at Ernst & Young's annual conference, and the keynote that I gave was savage storytelling, teaching these founders how to use their brand to grow. And, like, standing ovation, everyone's coming after me afterwards, so on and so forth. So yes, to answer that question, but even the way I'm running my business now, I'm more aggressive. Like I pitch more often. If someone's reaching out to me saying, hey, I like this stuff, I'm like, hey, you want to buy it? You know, like more politely than that. But I was talking to my wife about that this week. Like I don't want to give a number, but like a decent amount of money that came in this week just for me saying, hey, I'm glad you like this. Do you want to buy something? You know what I mean? So I'm more aggressive in how I pitch myself because, and now I think we're double clicking here, because now people see the more like over aggressive Terry online. But again, that's why I love coaching people because again, my goal is to help you live and tell better stories. So I do lifestyle coaching too, where I show you all my systems, even my AI prompts that show you how I only work like 3.5 hours a day, but still raise all these kids, go to the gym, podcasts, keynotes, and all that stuff too.
So it's at the core of a lot of fundamentals of branding and stuff. You represent who you are, what you sell at the top, then you can say, don't you want to buy it? You know, frickin' buy it later on.
But can we stop, like, how many other people listening, do you realize when someone says, hey, this was great, that's an opportunity for you to pitch them, should you choose to? You're not cold DMing people. They're saying, hey, man, cool post. You're like, hey, man, if you like this shit, buy. You know what I mean? I want more people to just try that and to try for a week and just see what happens.
Part of why I was laughing is because just even picturing that DM conversation is not something I've encountered with any creator. You know, maybe you get an automated thing that's like, so grateful to have you here. You might like this thing. Yeah. But some of that must also come from just the confidence you have in your products helping people.
It's that, yes. And again, that's the easy answer. But it's also like the frustration about all the times when I didn't speak up, when I didn't ask for more, when I didn't negotiate how much I'm getting paid for a keynote or something. And you have to have standards. And I think it's a healthy way for everyone to look around. Look at your surroundings, your physical surroundings, your financial situation, like whatever it is. That's what you tolerate. You tolerate that much money. You tolerate those surroundings. You tolerate the network you're in. You tolerate your personal brand and being where it is. So if you don't like it, then you got to raise your freaking standards and say, no, this is what I tolerate. Here's how much I charge. Here's how I communicate with people. If you want to work with me, you have to reply, but like you have to have very strict standards that you adhere to, because if your floor is low, then you're never going to ascend. I can't remember the exact quote, but this woman, Reagan Hillyer, said, we don't get what we dreamed for, we get what we tolerate. I'll say it again. You don't get the life that you dream for, you get the life that you tolerate. So if you don't like the life you have right now, you got to check what you're tolerating, right? And raise your freaking standards. And if you're like, there might be some blockers there, you got to attack that, right? Let's do some mindset work. But everything around you, you're tolerating. So if you don't like it, that's on you. You can make a change.
Are there other just habitual things now that you've developed that like every creator should try this for a week?
Yeah, I'll give you one that's, if you're looking to get keynotes or workshops that you're delivering in a company, this is so simple. Because I've tried like the mass email route where you buy a list or you get a list and you're like, oh, here's my funnel. No one gives a shit. So what I did the other day, my friend Andrea Casanova, she told me, she's, look, you probably already know enough people in your network on LinkedIn. You can just DM them and ask them who hires speakers at their organization. And I was like, could it be that simple? Could it be that simple? Here's the problem. When things are very impactful and monumental and meaningful, we naturally assume they have to be difficult. It can't be that easy. I can't just DM someone and say, hey, who hires speakers for your company? I got to set up the funnel and I got to use this tool. It's not the case sometimes. It doesn't always have to be that difficult. So what I did is, to try it out, I DM'd 10 people, first-degree connections on LinkedIn, and I have a template. It's pretty basic. Hey, just curious, do you know who hires speakers at your organization? I gave this talk called Savage Storytelling. It's great for consulting teams as well as sales teams or anyone who's customer-facing. They might have this title. Do you know who that would be? I sent it to 10 people. First time I did it, like at 9 o'clock at night. By the next morning, I got 5 responses. 5 responses. So 50%, sample size of 10, but whatever, 50% of people
That's still, yeah,
got back to
incredible.
me.
Yeah.
And one of them was like, I can just hire you. And I was like, that's a pretty good idea. So I kept the process going. And then another person said the same thing. They're like, we probably can't pay your rate, but here's how much we can pay you. We'll pay you this much money as well as travel and lodging. What do you say? And I'm like, is this all I had to freaking do the whole time? Like, I'm sitting here listening to freaking, I don't even know what it was, like Young Jeezy or something, like just zoning out, like DMing all these people, and it works. So there's a concept called MITs, your most important tasks. Like, what are the things you should do every day to reach your goal? Now my MITs are just DMing people on LinkedIn saying, hey, do you know someone who would want to help work with me? So please try this stuff. Like, I'm not sharing theories or something I read in a book or heard in a whatever. Like, this shit actually works. Like, it does. If you have questions about it, you can reach out to me. But I don't ever share theory. I just share experiences. And if people find a lesson in those experiences, that's sweet. But I just know what works for me and the people that I partner with. So that's why I enjoy sharing it.
Huh. How much of your business at this point is like individual consumers versus businesses?
It's mostly businesses. I want to start working with individual consumers a lot more because I just love being connected to my audience. So that's why I recently started some coaching programs that are aligned with storytelling and lifestyle design, because I used to be doing like biz dev coaching and stuff like that. I don't want to do that anymore. There's so many people who can do that better than me. My voice is no longer needed in that conversation. So my best contribution to the creator economy, to entrepreneurship in general, maybe the world, dare I say, is helping people live and tell better stories. So that's what I'm leaning in on. And I'm doing more workshops around it. I'm doing more individual coaching around it too. And it's just so fun to just have people get that unlock where they're like, wait a second, like I can be the real me? Like, yeah, you probably should. It's going to be painful not doing that. And there's this quote, this woman, Sam J., she's a comedian on SNL. She said, hey, earlier in my stage, I was tempted to copy other comedians to get better, but I was afraid that it would work. And I'd be stuck being someone else my entire career. And I feel there are so many people who are stuck being someone else, an identity they didn't choose. So for me to help them uncover who the real them and then tell their story loudly and boldly, like for me, I just love that stuff.
Literal is your process of teaching storytelling? I ask this because I've been watching, do you know the channel Digital Spaghetti, the YouTube? It's CEO of Patreon. He just interviews YouTubers, like young people just making beautiful shit. But it's amazing how many of them literally think in like a 3-part structure to their videos or a Shakespearean like 5 route. Are you thinking that way, or what is your approach to teaching storytelling, especially with this concept of the anti-hero as the main character?
The first is this. I think people assume their audience cares before they do. So you have to earn their attention. You know what I mean? I imagine like you're walking down the street in Manhattan and there's a magazine rack there. What would have to be on the cover of a magazine to make you stop walking and pick it up and look at it? That should be your opening hook, right? I know people are like all hook crazy. Like, it's true. You do need a good hook, right? So how do I grab someone's attention with some kind of pattern interrupting thought? But I think, how do I earn it? And how do I maintain it? So with my writing, there's always a sense of urgency. I'm concerned the person's going to get bored and swipe away or just, close out their inbox or something. I respect that so much that it's verbal hook information. I'm almost like anxious that you're about to like just stop reading my content. And I just make sure that it flows that way. So when I'm coaching people, I'm like, no one owes you their attention. They got other stuff to do. But if you give them a good story with good information, and if you make them think or act differently afterwards, then you'll be in a good spot. So I do my best to make it more cinematic. And that's why there's like more grainy details sometimes than you might expect. But when I'm teaching people, like that's what I help them do. So let's pull these stories out of you in a way that is constructive and can provide value to your audience. And I have a ton of AI prompts that I can use for that. That's what I give people in my playbooks. It makes it so much easier because you can take any story. Like today I went to the gym and this happened. Just get the basics down and then throw in these prompts. And it'll give you a wonderful story that actually is aligned with your tone of voice, obviously, and your experiences, but will make sure that you're not losing people's attention during the process.
Fascinated with just how much you work with AI. I'm curious your process of like, you put in a story, I went to the gym, yada, yada. It spits this thing out. How are you then ingesting and like just becoming a better storyteller without that tool by using it?
I'm just more aware of the inputs that need to go into a good story. That's what you're giving ChatGPT, right? Like here's like the main thing. Here's a lesson. Here's something I learned. And then having it fill in the blanks there. So I'm able to be a more pure storyteller and not using as much energy, perhaps, just trying to fill in the details. I'm going to mess up the whole analogy, but like when people are like, this is like old school, when people were making cartoons, there is someone who just made the shapes and someone who did the shading of the shapes. The shading is probably the easier part, I'm assuming. So on my end, I'm just like making the outline of the shapes, saying here's the structure, and then, hey, ChatGPT, you make it colorful. You know what I mean? And not for nothing, but it's some people are like, oh, you shouldn't do that. It's inauthentic. And I asked my audience on LinkedIn, I'm like, do you actually care if creators use AI to create their content? And they're like, nah, dude, as long as it's good. I'm like, thank you. Thank you for saying that. Yeah. People are trying to call people like, oh, you use AI. I'm like, it was a good post. Are you angry because I didn't work harder to write it? Are you angry because I actually went and hung out with my kids instead of spending 2 hours writing this stuff? No, I'd rather go live an interesting life, distill it down to some lessons you might want to enjoy, and then use AI to help me with that. I'm better off doing that as opposed to spending like an hour writing a LinkedIn post. I should just go to the gym and talk to you about working out afterwards. Yeah. That's a fair exchange, in my opinion.
Got to wrap up slowly here, but I wanted to go back to something you started with, which was talking about losing your identity somewhat when you lost your job and how that can happen. I think it can be so dangerous to tie your identity to your work, but it so naturally happens when we spend so much time doing that. What's your relationship with like your identity and who you are now in your work? And like, do you think it's healthier? Is it just different? What's that dynamic?
Oh, fast forward. It's great now. I'll give you the boring answer. But for a while, when I first started out, like it was almost the repeat of me looking for logos to have behind me. Because very quickly after getting laid off and starting my own business, I started teaching at NYU. So I was like, oh, well, I have a title again. And then I started consulting like NBC and all these other companies. And I spoke at South by Southwest. And I got hired by all these other cool companies. And like, I was like the logo guy again. I'm like, wait a second, man, why am I doing this again? Like, I felt proud of myself because at least I earned those logos. Like, they vetted me and they weren't stuck with this employee who was like crappy or whatever. But I was like, wait a second, man, this I'm doing it again. You know, let me just build my own platform, my own voice, so on and so forth. And like, these are partners that I love, you know, so on and so forth. But like, when I introduce myself, like, I don't mention that I've been featured in this or I write for this platform or whatever. So that's how my relationship has changed. But you can tell when people can't let go of it because they're on LinkedIn saying X Uber, X Meta. I'm like, bro, who are you today? You know what I mean? Come on. Like, what'd you do yesterday? Fuck. Like, just I can't remember the quote. It's, used to bees don't make any honey. Like, you used to be this, but used to bees don't make any honey. And what are you doing now? Because that's what we want to hear about.
Just two more questions and a few rapid fire questions. But I always like asking creators this because, and I don't know where you're at, but like most of the people I speak to are on the other side of at least enough financial freedom to be pretty good. You know, you effectively won the financial game, but will just keep going forever. Is there a point where you sign off, or is this just something you do into your 80s?
Yeah. One end is having a family office, and that normally requires having about $100 million to put in that. I'm a little short right now, so I'm not done. But also, I think about my dad. My dad had to retire early because he had cancer. And he was just bored, so he started doing workshops at his home for people about how to save and make money. He bought all these folding chairs. He would get it catered. He's not charging any money. And I'm like, Dad, why do we have all these fucking chairs here? He knew that having a sense of purpose was important to him and meaningful and kept him engaged and just like providing value to the world. I don't see a time when I'll stop by design. Like, people who retire, like, why would I want to retire from this life? It's fun. I write content and I make videos and I help people. Like, why would I be like, oh, enough of that shit? You know what I mean? So I don't see an end game. I see as I get older, maybe there's less time doing it. And I'm just like traveling to see my kids or hanging out with my wife and stuff like that. But no, this shit's cool. Like, I enjoy it.
I love that. I'm also so curious to see, like, it's a few generations, but this era of creators enter their old age. I just think you're all going to be super awesome people. I wanted to end with this question before just some rapid fire. This is something I've struggled with. I also see a lot of people struggle with, whether you've built even somewhat of a following or made some money online or not. I think it's very easy to fall into the trap of just like, well, there's something else I need to learn before I can do this. What do you think the line is between when it's time to learn and when it's time to go do the thing?
Planning and even preparing is a form of procrastination. Colin Powell, right? Why did I mention Colin Powell? You'll be amazed. Colin Powell has what's called a 40-70 rule, where he never makes a decision or moves forward on a project or an endeavor without at least 40% of the information that's available and needed, right? But he also never gets more than 70% either. He's like, you know what? This is enough. It's time to take action, right? That's what I would tell people. Go for that 40 to 70, you know what I mean? Because when you take action, that's how you actually learn. And there's normally only a few steps you need to take to make some progress. It's like actions. What do you want to do? Grow your newsletter. Tools. Get a platform for that. The most important thing is mindset. So actions, tools, mindset, ATM. Like the mindset to actually do the shit. So yeah, that's what I would say. 40, 70, and don't let perfection be the enemy of progress.
Love it. Rapid fire questions for you. Who's like inspiration these days? Someone you've been obsessed with or just absorbing a lot of content from?
Kobe Bryant, because one of my favorite quotes from him is, channel the villain, unleash the hero. And that's what you're doing as an anti-hero. The villain, again, is the problem that your audience has, as well as all the bullshit out there. And that's how you unleash the hero within yourself.
Your favorite creator anti-hero at the moment?
I'd say my wife. She talks a lot about getting through like grief in the workplace or a lot of maternal health work. Just a strong proponent for a lot of social causes. And it's great to see her do this because, and shout out to my wife, Dominique Rice, if you want to follow her, because it's not something she ever planned on doing. She has a job, a 9-to-5. And for her to sit there and just bravely and boldly and consistently create content is really great to see. And to the point where we're staying up at night sometimes, like building her products and like her ebooks and all this stuff. And it's a really cool way to see her express herself fully without the constraints that can come with any job.
That's so cool. Best slice in New York.
Best slice in New York. You know what's funny? My family and I went to this place, it's called Pizza Barn in Yonkers. And they have the largest piece of pizza in Brooklyn. It's a couple of feet long. So I'm not sure if it's like the largest slice of pizza in New York City or just like a pizza that's shaped like a slice and it's whatever. But it was good. We went there. We had an amazing time. The kids loved it. The staff was great too. So it's called Pizza Barn in Yonkers.
Creator celebrity that you think should have an online course?
Creator celebrity that I think should have an online course. Charlemagne the God. I like talking to him because there's often contradictions in how you might think he behaves, because he's a father too. He has daughters, but he's also a huge proponent for mental health. And the last time I was talking to him, he was like, yeah, and my therapist said this, my therapist said that. But he's also an agitator, where he'll like poke holes at things or like start shit. So I'm like, I would love to just deconstruct how he like runs his life, like in a course, because he just is like an amazing interviewer. I just love the fact that he presents himself in a way that's authentic, that's raw, that's gritty, that's not purposely antagonizing or not overly antagonizing. So Charlotte Godden, like real quick, I got to tell you a story how I met him, because this is for everyone listening. This is for everyone listening. I've been lucky to an extent in my career, but luck is when preparation and opportunity are met with action. So how did I meet Charlemagne the God? Good question. In the bathroom. I was at an event here in New York City, hoping to see him speak. And after he got off stage, I was going to rush over to him. Fortunately, he went behind this corner, never saw him again. Walking in the bathroom, doing my thing, just like I was like in Boston. And I see he just walks in. I'm like, oh shoot, that's Charlemagne the God. So I'm like, I got to talk to this guy, but we're both at the stall. I'm like, this is not appropriate, right? So I go to wash my hands, and I'm like washing my hands. I'm taking an extra long time, because I'm like, if I just wait long enough, I can finally talk to the guy. So I'm like looking at the mints they got and shit, like the deodorant, all this stuff. I'm like, all right, let me make sure, blah, blah. So he finally came over to wash his hands. I was like, hey man, no disrespect, but I was just wondering, can I interview you? He's like, yeah, sure. He's like, here? I'm like, no, dude, I'm not in the bathroom. But moral of the story that I want to bring up is like, when you have those chances in life, sometimes like you have like at max 7 seconds to make a decision. Am I going to go for it or not? And I'm asking you to go for it. Be savage, be whoever you need to be, but speak up, because if you ask, the answer will be yes or no. If you don't ask, the answer is definitely going to be no.
Last question, just anything else you want to share before we sign off?
Honestly, like if you're ready to embrace this more bold version of yourself, this anti-hero version of yourself, if you go to thesavagelife.co, there's this free guide that'll help you get clear on how you want to show up in the world in a way that's more, I don't say aggressive, but more, I'll say aggressive, while still leading with integrity, inspiring those around you. Just go to thesavagelife.co and you can grab that guide there.
Awesome. Terry, thank you so much. This was such a blast. We'll see you around. For everyone listening and watching, check out Terry's going to be all around Teachable during this time. Thank you so much for being here, and we'll talk to you soon, Terry.
Thanks for having me.
Terry is a perfect example of how embracing your struggles and turning them into strengths can not only redefine your career, but also inspire others to take bold steps in their own lives. His journey reminds us that authenticity isn't a game and just about being authentic. It's about being brave enough to share your actual story. I hope you learned as much as I did today, found something you can apply to your life, and if nothing else, I hope you were inspired by Terry's story to rethink your own anti-hero and what it means to show up as yourself wherever you show up in public. If you want to join the thousands of other creative entrepreneurs building an income out of their impact, click the link in the description to join the club and learn how Teachable can help you do the same. And if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and check out our recommended next episode linked here. Thanks again for being here, and we'll catch you in the next one.